So I introduced you to the notion of cluster sampling as a representative way of sampling a population. Remember we said we'll randomly select these clusters that we've sort of created somewhat artificially, right? Because we've had to. We don't have a population list to draw from. So what do we do when we actually get to that cluster? And this is that cluster maybe that we randomly selected right here. Okay, that's it. Bigger. But we need to know, we need to at least have a list of everyone, or at least every household within that cluster. We could sort of divide it up for equal amounts. Or we could figure out some way to sort of randomly move within this cluster, randomly select our households of their second stage sampling. There's a variety of ways to do that. Some spin a bottle, find a sort of center, spin a pen, if you will, and it moves in a certain direction, right? And then we would sort of count these houses out the periphery, spin again, move in another direction, and so on. Or you can just randomly, there's a finite number here, we can just randomly select that number. So a variety of ways to do this, but that said, the idea of the second stage of cluster sampling is to ensure that, again, everyone sort of has a equal, at least non-zero chance of being selected. Good. Well, in reality, we'd like to sample as many people as we can, or as many households as we can, right? Because we think, in fact, if we sample more, we'll have more precise estimates, right? Unfortunately, life intervenes, and often we're limited by time, and particularly by money. And time, particularly because many places where you do our cluster sampling could be legitimately dangerous places, right? So you can imagine if you're in Eastern Congo, for instance, and you're looking at death from infectious diseases because the public health infrastructure is broken down as a result of conflict. And you know that the farther east you go in Congo, Kabu, Lake Kivu, that area, right? You may not even be able to get there. You've done this nice big, you've broken the whole country down into clusters, and you've randomly selected, and you've got like 3 or 4 clusters that are ending up in the far east part of the country. Then you can't get there. So what does that do to your estimate? Well, you may not be able to get there, so it makes it smaller, right? It also introduces a little bit of bias, doesn't it? Because we know we're probably going to miss, households that are really experiencing what you're worried about. Okay, so to realize that there are always limitations, and we have to just figure out how to deal with those limitations. Because nothing's perfect, unfortunately. I'm going to talk a little bit about this design effect thing. We just talked a little bit about non-response, how that can bias it. Remember, we have these 2 formulas for sample size, and I said this actually inflates this number, right? All right, this is a busy slide, but the way I explain design effect is this. If you're creating clusters, so say you have a village or a couple neighborhood streets that represent a cluster of households, and say you're looking at something that cluster, everyone in that cluster has a high likelihood of experiencing together, right? So I'll show you an example in a second about cluster sampling in urban Baghdad, right after the war was over. Right? What was happening in urban Baghdad? There were bombs going on in the streets, right? Particularly in places that people congregate. So if you sampled, for instance, near a market or a school, or some other civic place where people would tend to gather, right? Then it could very likely be that cluster, say you're looking at violent causes of death, right? could be very high, right? So that could sort of skew things in a direction. But what else sort of clusters, right? Infectious diseases cluster, right? Especially if they're easily transmissible. So waterborne diseases, so diarrheal diseases, for instance. ARI is acute respiratory infections. Measles is another one, very high transmissibility from person to person. So again, if you choose a cluster where you're looking at this as an endpoint, right, likely that that population experienced it all the same. And maybe others not at all. Okay? So what you get is a wide variance, a wide variability in that across the population. And that's where design effect comes in. When you create clusters, you're likely, those of us on this side of the room may experience that air conditioner a lot more than that cluster back there, right? And it's a spatial thing, true, right? But it is causing a wide variation in how we're experiencing the outcome of the coldness of air. That's design effect. So when we create clusters, it means we have to sample a lot more to really get the precision we want, particularly around things that tend to cluster. And I give you a list here to also add immunization coverage. Now, for those of you who've been, who are in public health, you know that a lot of times there's what's called immunization campaigns, right? One day out of the year, we send out flyers, immunization day, the whole village has to show up. Nobody goes out to the fields, right? They all stay home, or they all come to the clinic, and they all get vaccinated. All gets their card stamps, and everyone gets their card stamps, right? Now, if I was coming back 2 months later, and I want to look at how good the vaccination coverage was, right? And I happen to select your village, guess what? Great coverage, right? So they're clustering kind of variable. So realize how you're able to do that. Other things, not so much. Non-communicable diseases, hypertension, diabetes, things like that, tend not to cluster. And I'll show you an example of how that works when we study treatment. Because it's kind of, widespread across populations everywhere. Just because I'm sitting here next to Adam doesn't mean he's got high blood pressure. Because he's got high blood pressure. And because I'm his neighbor sitting here, doesn't mean I have just as high likelihood of having hypertension. In fact, you in the back row probably have just as much, if not more, of a chance than maybe Adam does, right? So there's no reason for hypertension to cluster in a place, right? So there are things that do and don't. And so it's important to know what those are. So those would have a lower design effect, right? If a whole country was suffering a famine, again, acute malnutrition can be very widely varied, or widely dispersed, right? Or everywhere, right? Okay. So we have to calculate what that design effect is, often after the fact. And it's in relationship to if we just simply random sampled. So it's essentially a ratio. If I did a simple random sample versus doing a cluster sample. And usually it inflates it by at least a factor of 2. Could be more, but at least by 2. Okay. So let's look and see kind of how this is all done. We're going to look at 2 mortality studies in the war in Iraq. Mortality, I have to say there was like maybe a 10-year period of time where everybody had to do a mortality study. I think STAR 4 had about, 8 mortality studies. Not that it was wrong with that, but it got us all used to doing a lot of cluster sampling if it had any benefit. But it became a research challenge. The cluster sampling method became challenged a little bit. All right, so this group out of Johns Hopkins. Actually, this is my former advisor as a PhD student, the Burnham study. So they were essentially didn't have lists of Iraq, and so of the population of Iraq, and so they had to create clusters. Now they chose 50 clusters. It's always interesting if you choose more clusters And you're looking at something that clusters, right, in time and place, because now we're looking at violent death as one of the outcomes. Remember we said that tends to cluster. If you have a lot of clusters, where it's clustering, right, you're going to lose precision, because remember, it's increasing the variance, how the data is throughout the population. Okay. Sometimes counterintuitive, but anyway. So this number is kind of interesting because it shows the number of clusters, and then they took 40 in each cluster to get 2,000 households. I will tell you that the next study will actually have fewer clusters, but a lot more in the second stage. And that actually gives it a little bit more precision. All right, so we're looking at violent versus non-violent death. We're looking at a 3-year recall period of time. If you go back in time and ask about mortality, you're asking, your family, your household, did you have a family member die in the last 3 years? Can you remember that, you think? Okay, so some people can. It's variable. The longer recall period, obviously, the less accurate it tend to be. And here's what they came up with. So the violent mortality was 601,000 people with a confidence interval between 426 and 793. In other words, this number had a 95% chance of being within this interval. Okay? So we know we have a 95% chance that it's in this interval somewhere, and most likely fairly close to this. That's what a confidence interval tells us. That means that compared to what the normal mortality rate was, there were this many excess deaths. And so the concept of excess mortality is really, again, something that hits the news because people want to know how many people really did die in excess of. And that tells you how egregious, right, this conflict was. People were dying excessively than the baseline. All right, this is actually not from the study, but I'm showing this to you to show you how difficult it is, how cluster sampling can kind of be as a stray. These are actually places for about a year's period of time, immediately after the war, where 10 people or more were killed in Baghdad. This is a digress, coming through. Digress over. So, what do you notice about this pattern? There's spatial pattern here, I think. Okay. You think so, right? You know what's that? All right. No worries, that's fine. I'll help you out a little bit here. How about this main road, right? There's a little bit of clustering that takes place. For you. A little bit here. Kind of along, sort of these corners here, right? You can sort of argue that, a lot of clustering takes place. When they actually did this as a study in the urban areas, okay, they were choosing clusters using main streets. And they randomly choose a main street. They take the main street and randomly select a cross street. The problem with that is you can miss entire neighborhoods, right, off those main streets. And if you had a market or some other place, right, where people tend to gather, you were looking at violent death, say from a suicide bomb or unexploded ordnance of some sort, right, you would miss that. So that was one of the criticisms of using cluster sampling, in particular in an urban environment. So it still remains a bit of a challenge for us to do this. I'll show you some different ways around this. Tomorrow, when we talk about using GIS, because there's ways to get around that. So the concern here is we are missing segments of the population that we're really interested in. as we mentioned. And you have to take into effect there may be actually geographic variability in the patterns of death. Okay. Are the members of the household more likely to have a violent death? Probably so. And can you account for human behaviors to determine where people spend their time? Because depending on where you spend your time could actually increase your risk of being killed in the following case. There was another survey done around the same time. This one took a lot of clusters, again, and a smaller number of households per cluster. So much larger in terms of numbers. Looking at the same thing, okay, and they found a much lower rate of violent death. Now the thought here was, we increase our number of clusters, hopefully we won't make that mistake of finding places where high clustering, low clustering, we think enough of them. So we got an estimate from that. It's I think around 300,000. That one people tended to believe a little bit more. Let me just show you very quickly, though, how looking at mortality with cluster sampling is tricky. These are ratios of estimates at true values, okay? And one obviously being sort of the middle one here. So this is actually a measure of percentage. If we increase our number of clusters, look what happens. We think we're getting more precision, but eventually we really don't get much more precision, right? Sort of this slope sort of evens off, this slope evens off, and we'll never get sort of between this range of precision, right? Make sense? And that's for non-violent deaths. And we assume that non-violent deaths happen kind of everywhere sort of equally, right? Probably. Unless you live near a coal mine or something, that's a higher chance of having deaths from something else. Yeah. So, very different from the war-related deaths. You can see with the precision here, we really lose it, right? Never really gets, that's a much bigger range. Very preventive, well, I'm just showing this real quick. This is one we did after Hurricane Katrina. Remember I said we were looking at specifically non-communicable diseases. This one we didn't need as many, quite as many clusters. We used every shelter as a cluster. We didn't have the population, we had the population in shelters, we didn't have the population in each shelter, so we did cluster sampling. That was our sample size. There are shelters we mapped out. Shelters could be as big as this big arena. There's a basketball arena at Louisiana State University. It could be a high school basketball court in a high school. It could be a Baptist church in a small town. So the thing is, we had to actually figure out, if this is a cluster, how do we count these people? Or how do we select? For each one of those places, we mapped them out, and then randomly selected the number of cots in each place. So we ended up with 18 clusters of 30 adults. It was fairly small. Fairly poor population. When you do 2/3 of the population rent, that's a fairly poor population by U.S. standards. A lot of people on benefits, government benefits. A lot unemployed or partially unemployed. And about a third had no regular health provider. So again, this is coming out of a skewed population, granted. They were an unhealthy population to begin with. They just went through a natural disaster that cut them off from their healthcare system. And it reflected it, right? With those numbers. So we wanted to look at how many people were, what their actual disease frequency was. And this is, again, these are chronic diseases, so not too surprising. Fairly high prevalence in the population, hypertension, high cholesterol. These are percentages, right? Remember, we wanted to calculate our design effect. And then we did a simple regression. So, there was some statistical significance. This is an odds ratio. So you get about a 2 1/4 chance of having some, of lacking your prescription medication if you didn't have health insurance, and that kind of made sense. Right? If you showed up at the shelter having some acute symptoms of one of your diseases, like you're having chest pain, you're an asthmatic, or you have heart disease, you know, you were about 2.6% or 2.6 times, you know, likely if you had your medication, 2.2 if you didn't have your medication. So it kind of didn't matter. The point of was that you know you were ill when you arrived, and this helped the shelters, you know, determine the local people volunteering the shelters to get them connected with their hosts. So let's move on. Can you bring up the next one? By the way, this is a little, just to tell you when everything is falling apart and bombs are blowing off, that's a little smiley face in your car. Stay optimistic. All right. So those are common quantitative sampling methods. This is part of work, some of the work done by my colleague, although I've done some qualitative research myself, and mixed methods research. I haven't done as much as I've done quantitative. So I'll throw some of my examples in here, I think. But let's talk a little bit about qualitative research as well. Now, I would argue that the two are actually very complementary with each other. We'll talk about mixed methods towards the end of this. So, by the way, any question on the quantitative stuff we talked about? Summarized sampling, cluster sampling. I'll give one more example of a quantitative method at the end of this. Okay. To tell you the truth, I don't think in any disaster situation, even in a conflict situation, you cannot live by quantitative data alone. Because you simply have to be able to explain it. And this is where qualitative research actually comes into play. And I'll give you a couple examples as we go on. Right, qualitative data is descriptive, it's observational, it is subjective in the sense that you don't have hard numbers on something, right? You have perceptions, you have beliefs, you have some attitudes, you have, you know, what people are feeling and understanding, right? But it's giving you context to often a lot of your objective findings, right? So you're asking a lot about the how and why, rather than how many. And what qualitative research allows you to do is to explore. And that's the beauty of it. There's a lot of flexibility to it. We just talked about quantitative methods. There's a lot of rigidity, right? You've got to do things a certain way. If you really want true representatives, you have to do it this way. And you have to be able to do it that way to apply statistics to it. In this case, you're not necessarily going to do that. But there's meaningful analysis that comes out. The other nice thing about qualitative research is you don't have to worry so much about sample size, right? You want to try to get as many respondents as you can to get to a point of saturation where you understand what you're asking, right? It's all about investigating the meaning, not the frequency. So, the why, what's the meaning of events? You know, what is the physical and social context? Why are you seeing what you're seeing? Or what is the process that's taking place? So again, here's just some maybe useful distinctions between qualitative and quantitative. We just mentioned the strengths of qualitative. Well, what are some of the weaknesses? Well, we already said it's not generalizable. So, you know, when you are bringing your data forward to policymakers, to media, right, you're going to have to be able to explain the fact that this is not necessarily representative of the population, but it's certainly creating trends that we see that are real within the population. But we can't really make comparisons. And it certainly can be easily misleading. So, you know, those are the sort of negatives, but again, you use what tools you need. So similar to what we looked in quantitative, and that is you select a population of interest. That doesn't change, right? It goes back to that sampling theory we talked about, right? You're going to identify a population of interest. You're still going to assign a study. You're still going to develop your survey tools. all of this is the same as what you do in quantitative work, right? Gather data, gather pilot data, gather data, do data entry, do some data analysis, interpret it, and then interpret it for everybody else. So finding participants means you're going to purposefully look for those people that represent institutions that actually are going to be able to answer what you want to answer, right? So this is a gender, if there's a gender-based violence issue happening in the community, right? Or among groups of people, why is that? Right? So maybe you look to women's groups, NGOs who are doing women's rights. You may be looking at the providers that are taking care of victims of gender-based violence, right? So start thinking about who's in this, realm that can answer that question. So you're going to recruit, with a purpose in mind, who's going to answer that question. At the end of this discussion, we'll talk about this group a little bit because there are ways, both qualitative and quantitative, to get at that as well. I think qualitative research is hard to do, mainly because it really is an amazing skill, I think. Particularly coming in as an outsider in the community, right? It'd be very hard for me to step into a rural Filipino village and start asking questions. I mean, what is that, right? And it'd be hard for you maybe to come to my neighborhood and ask questions. I mean, it's just going to be very difficult. And so it takes a very special skill, sometimes to get at very sensitive information, very controversial information. This is no different. It is research, right? So you still have informed consent. And I will just give you one example. I mean, we did a qualitative study that was funded by Physicians for Human Rights, an NGO near us. And they wanted to look at, they wanted to study looking at the patterns of abuse that happened with our 40 women who left Darfur, fled into Chad, right, into the refugee camps of Chad. And the idea was to look at some patterns that were taking place, types of abuses that were taking place at the hands of the Janjaweed, the Sunni Janjaweed, during a certain time frame. Okay, so these are Muslim women, for starters. So I knew as a white guy, Western white guy, I would probably not be asking these questions, right? That's number one. Number two, obviously we're going to have women, but Western women, so that added some challenge. We also realized that there were really no NGOs in the camps that were working around this issue. Now, PHR wanted us to do this because they wanted to bring some kind of study before the International Criminal Court, because they were trying to get Bashir, who's the president of Sudan, up on human rights charges, genocide charges, I think, as I recall. Okay, so that was a challenge for us. We got to Eastern Chad, and one of the first things we realized is women really don't talk about this. Not only that, but their husbands were watching them all the time. So, how are we going to get by this? Well, we decided to have this as a women's health study. So we asked, and this is common actually in gender-based violence studies now. This is one of the first times we did it. We asked about their health.